Today I'm going to be talking about second language acquisition and the various factors that come into play when somebody is learning a second language. Um, you need to keep in mind that there are a variety of salient or important interrelated factors that influence second language acquisition. As we've already discussed in class, socioeconomic status is one of them. We talked about downward and upward mobility, meaning that some, for example, immigrants who come to this country may experience a change in their socioeconomic status. And this can go either downward or upward. So they could have been, say, middle class in their countries, and then once they immigrate somewhere else, their socioeconomic status goes down, or the other way around. Um, Another important factor is the amount of schooling experiences. We can say that you can have a full-fledged schooling experience, meaning that there was no interruption whatsoever. So, for example, a child, say, went all the way through third grade in their home country, and then when they immigrated to the U.S., they were able to basically resume their schooling. And then we also have interrupted schooling experiences. And one term that I would like for you to make note of is SIFE, SIFE, and that is students with interrupted formal education. And we know that children who are considered SIFE, may experience some difficulties. This would be the case of, say, a fifth grader or somebody who went all the way through fifth grade in their home country. They came to this country, were not enrolled in school, and say they didn't really start school until, say, a year later. But because of all that lab that happened, they're not at the fifth grade level anymore, but rather in third grade. Some actually have their schooling is interrupted for longer periods of time, and this is especially the case when you have children who may or may have never gone to school in their home country. So they come here. Some parents may be confused about what to do or how to enroll their children, so they don't really go to school at all until, say, several years later. So the fact that they've had schooling experiences has a huge impact on whether or not they acquired the second language. And we do know that the more they've, as actually we discussed in class, the more they've experienced schooling, and the more they are aware of what happens in schools and the norms and the expectations, the better are their chances of basically adapting to the school, and therefore to making learning that second language a little bit, quote unquote, easier. We also know that we have to have supportive home environments, and we want them to maintain their native language. If you recall the movie you saw, Under the Same Moon, you saw a mother who was, she was very concerned about her child. She basically could not attend, quote unquote, school functions or other things based on the case study that you also read, because she had two jobs, and she basically was trying to provide for her child. In the case study, though, and actually in the video, you saw that the mother did speak English, but that's not the case for some of the parents who you may be working with. So we do know that having a supportive home environment is important, and honestly, this applies to everyone, not just to second language learners. We also know that the length of residence in the country is very important, and this goes back to having a full-fledged or interrupted schooling experience. We know that the longer they've been in the country, the better their chances are of, again, adapting and understanding the norms. We also have affective factors, and this is where Krashen's affective filter come into play. And basically, Krashen's affective filter means that, the higher your stress level is, the more concerned you are about what's going on in the classroom, for example, the less are your chances of actually learning a language, because you're so concerned, you're so caught up with what's going on around you, that basically your learning is affected. So the higher the affective filter is, the lower your chances of learning. And conversely, the lower your affective filter is, as the lower it is, the higher your chances for learning. We also have societal factors, and we did talk about this in class. We talked about inequality, and maybe some children feel discrimination. A common thing that we actually talk about in this field is that sometimes the curriculum gets watered down because people feel like they don't know enough yet to be able to provide a rigorous academic curriculum for them, and that is actually counterproductive for these children. And we also know that academic development in the L1 is it is, how developed you are, how much you know about the content, math, science, social studies, and all these things will help you navigate, and will actually help you transfer what you know in your native language into the second one. And we'll talk about this academic development later on. So in your textbook, you saw that we had the PRISM model, and actually this PRISM model came out in 1997. And what the PRISM model means is that, as I just said, there are various interrelated components that actually influence first and second language acquisition. It's not just about the linguistic component or how good you are with semantics and syntax, but it's also about all those social factors, the different processes that the children may or may not have in place. It's also about, again, academic development. So again, the PRISM model, what that figure you saw means is that it's not just one thing that influences first and second language acquisition. There's actually many, and if we could basically categorize them, we could put them under one of four categories, or there may be some that may belong to more than one, but generally speaking, there's four. So we have the social cultural component, and again, these are all the social and cultural aspects. So for example, how children feel that others perceive them, the affective factors that I just talked about, crashing. We have maybe some of these children feel discriminated, whether discrimination is against them or their families or whoever they love. We also have the cognitive component, and this differs from academic component because the cognitive component looks at developmental processes. So how you process information, and how children, for example, may know how to use critical thinking skills or not. When we do have the academic component, which is basically the knowledge of all these academic subject areas, and by subject areas I mean math and science, and say language arts. And then we have the linguistic component, and for the linguistic component, we're talking here about all these predispositions and subconscious and conscious processes in both the L1 and the L2. So we have things like phonology, syntax, semantics, pragmatics, and discourse. And we'll talk about each one of these. So in this class, we're going to say that for somebody to be proficient in a language, that you need to have all these language subsystems. And the easiest way to see these actually is to think about these being different pieces of a puzzle, right? When one of those is missing, you cannot complete your puzzle. So we have five different language subsystems, and you can think of these also as being interrelated. So we have pragmatics, and pragmatics just means that you need to know what are the rules, the social linguistic rules in context. So, for example, how you approach somebody and tell someone something, when to use language, why you use language in appropriate ways. So, if, for example, you want to leave my class, you would probably come up with some excuse, right? Which be completely different to what you would probably say to one of your peers. So to me, you may come and say, well, I need to be excused from class tonight because I have a family situation. I'm not saying that's not true, right? But say that you talk to your peer and you say, oh, I just got to get out of here. It's completely different. You're conveying the same meaning, right? But your choice of words changes depending on who you're talking to, what the context is. Then you have semantics, and it just means it's knowing the meaning of words and utterances. And utterances are sentences. So, for example, if you have a child, say it's boring, right, outside, and somebody chooses to use the idiom, it's raining cats and dogs, think about the excitement that a child may experience if, say, they've never heard this phrase, right, or idiom, and they all of a sudden picture, like basically cats and dogs raining, coming down from the blue skies. So, knowing the meaning of those words has a huge impact. Then we also have morphology, which means how we form words. We also have phonology, which means how we use our sound system, right? And then we also have syntax, which means which are the different rules that pretty much dictate how them in order. So what comes first? Subject, verb. Do we need to have subject-verb agreement or not? So again, you need to have all these language subsystems, maybe to different extents in proficiency, but you have to have them all.